Ingrid, anything you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to say to the people of New York City, Ingrid? Did you betray their trust?
He has had a record with distinction and honor serving in the New York State Senate for decades. Also a district leader, and he's also had several prominent positions in city government. I think that he deserves the benefit of the doubt. He's maintaining his innocence, and I ask everybody in the public to reserve judgment till we let the truth come out.
Welcome to New York One's Off Topic on Politics. I'm New York One's investigative reporter, Courtney Gross. On Thursday, one of Mayor Adams's closest allies, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, who served as his senior advisor up until December of 2024, was charged in 4, let's count them together, 1, 2, 3, 4 new indictments, wide-ranging bribery schemes covering her time at City Hall. 6 others were also charged, including developers, a former state senator, and Adams' protege, as well as some campaign contributors as well. We'll tell you all about the cases, the others wrapped up in it, and what it means for the mayor this year. And then we will get you caught up on the mayor's race. Big topics this week included legalizing sex work, and of course, whether or not someone was coordinating with Donald Trump, not necessarily Mayor Eric Adams. We have a lot to get to, and joining me for the discussion is our Bobby Cuza.
Hi, Courtney. We're going to talk about potato chip bribes as well.
Potato Chipgate.
Potato Chipgate.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
We will. And Bernadette Hogan is also here. Hello, hello. Okay, so let's just jump right in. Obviously, these indictments we just got Thursday morning. They are coming down from Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office. I don't know if we want to go one by one, but let's just start big picture of what is in them. If you could summarize, Bobby Cuza?
Well, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, who was indicted December of last year?
Yeah. She resigned mid-December of last year.
And a couple days later, she was indicted.
And to be clear, for people who have no idea who this is.
Like moments later.
I mean, Ingrid Lewis-Martin was Mayor Adams' right hand, right? I mean, she was widely seen as the second most powerful person at City Hall. So this is not like some low-level staffer operative who's being charged here. I mean, there is no, and you guys have looked more closely at the indictment than I have, but there is no implication. Indictments.
Plural.
I mean, Mayor Adams is not directly implicated in this, right? There's no mention of him as being complicit in any of this. But we've seen that so many people in the Adams administration, and this is about as high as it gets in the Adams administration, have been, swept up in these federal investigations. I mean, I was just thinking about, it wasn't so long ago, we all have such short memories, that we were talking about, it was like 12 or 13 people in the administration who had either been indicted or had their homes raided by the feds, had their phones seized by the feds. And it's like the school's chancellor, the police commissioner, the first deputy mayor, the deputy mayor for public safety. I mean, this was like the top level of the Adams administration, all caught up in these federal investigations. And we thought it was going to spell the end of the Adams administration, the Adams mayoralty, and it didn't, right? Yeah. And so for months...
Yeah, I mean, Kathy Hochul was like, in the state legislature, was like, do we kick him out?
Should she have him removed? Yeah. And then we all kind of moved on, and then there was this whole other episode about whether, he was beholden to Donald Trump, and then Trump basically got the case dropped against Adams, his indictment. And then now all of a sudden we've kind of moved on, and Eric Adams is like sort of rehabilitated his image. I don't know if he's rehabilitated it, but he's gone back to, governing and kind of cleaned house. I mean, a lot of those people are all gone. They either resigned or were fired. So we'd all kind of stopped paying attention.
The one remaining person was actually still a city worker, and he was indicted today too. Right. So Ingrid Lewis-Martin, obviously very close person to Mayor Eric Adams. He calls her a sister. She says the same thing about him, obviously being a brother. She worked for him in the state Senate, the borough president's office. Her husband, I believe, was his former partner in the NYPD. This is a decades-long relationship. So Bern, I know you have been reading the indictments along with me. So let's just go very quickly, summarizing one by one. I mean, the first one that's in front of me includes the Jesse Hamilton allegations. So this was basically Jesse Hamilton and Ingrid Lewis-Martin pushing, and her son too.
DJ
39-year-old guy. Yeah, I think his
Suave
pseudonym
Luciano.
is Suave.
Suave.
He's a DJ. Anyway, so they've been pushing forward developer projects in the South Bronx and in Red Hook.
Yeah.
Pushing through multiple city agencies, whether it's HPD, trying to get these projects approved more quickly. And in exchange, they got some renovations on some houses,
Renovations
properties.
that actually don't amount to that much. I think in the indictment, it's something like $5,000 parceled over a couple hundred here, a couple thousand there. But I was going, this is the longest indictment, I believe, but I was going through the exhibits, or the rundown of the text messages between Ingrid Lewis-Martin, her son Jesse Hamilton, who is a deputy commissioner for real estate services in the city, and then also this developer, I'm going to pronounce his first name wrong, Yeshiel Landau, somebody that was seeking.
He's charged too.
He's also charged, right? 4 people charged in this, or actually 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah,
5.
Five.
5, including.
No, 4.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm counting the son's DJ name.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Suave Luciano.
Right.
Suave. I don't know,
Suave.
whatever.
So anyway, so this indictment details contact between Ingrid Lewis-Martin and her son and this developer Landau from June 10th, 2022 to September 27th, 2024. So a 2-year period. And the genesis of this is really interesting. First, it's the son, Glenn Martin II, contacting Ingrid to say, listen, I need you to talk to this developer. He's trying to get a project moved forward. He's getting some pushback from HPD, Housing Preservation and Development, an important agency in the city. So Ingrid begins this whole series of signal, non-encrypted or encrypted messaging with this developer. They're going back and forth. She gets Jesse Hamilton involved. And then all of a sudden,
Jesse Hamilton works at the Department of Citywide Administrative Services as a deputy commissioner for
real estate services.
Exactly. So he oversees a lot of the leases, city buildings, major, influential position. Former state senator. He actually took over Eric Adams' seat in the state Senate. Some people consider him a protege, somebody that Eric Adams tried to guided, tried to as some sort of mentor, and then obviously gave him this nice plum position within city government.
Exactly. So basically, this property owner, or this wannabe property owner, was trying to get permits and trying to get this I'm looking at the address right now, 1211 Southern Boulevard.
It's in the Bronx.
Trying to get, or was that the Red Hook project?
No, that's Southern Boulevard.
That's the other one. Okay. Regardless, trying to get something pushed forward. And there's all these text messages over the course of this 2-year period, between the developer Landau, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, and the son saying, listen, HPD has been unresponsive. And then you have Ingrid going to the deputy mayor for economic development and preservation, who at the time was Maria Torres Springer, trying to get her eyes on this, trying to get the HPD commissioner.
Basically, she's pushing forward these applications or these developments.
This specific development, and there was another project, trying to get them fast-tracked.
Yep.
And again, if you go, I took down, all these dates. It seems like she's working on this project almost on a daily basis at some chunks over this 2-year period. And then in exchange, the developer was doing renovation work at both Ingrid Lewis-Martin's property and then also Jesse Hamilton's property, where Ingrid Lewis-Martin's sister was set to move into.
Very, the incestuous, I don't know if it's incestuous is the right word, but the overlap, we should say, nature of these officials, their families, trying to get, allegedly, we should say they've pleaded not guilty in court today, that all of them deny these allegations. They're trying to get personal benefit here.
And it's interesting too, just quickly, then she's like, if there's any problems, let me know. She's a senior advisor to Mayor Eric Adams. So aren't there bigger projects that she could be working on?
But she can make things happen, right?
She can make things happen.
Anything she tells a commissioner or even a deputy mayor to do, she's gonna, or she can overrule the decision by some lower level official, whether it's building permits or fire permits. So she really has juice.
And quickly, I want to just read this. This is one text. She says to the developer in a text, I'm gonna get that place, HPD, under control. So when we effing tell them something, we expect them to make that SHIT move.
We could probably say that on the podcast,
Well,
but let's not.
But honestly, but I mean, and then there's another portion where she pulls the deputy mayor for economic and development out of a meeting with the mayor and says, I know the mayor's a priority, but can you jump out really quick and help with this project?
Who's renovating a property of hers. I mean, it's just wild, you know, the amount of personal graft is that, you know, that you would get. I just want to quickly go over the other schemes, alleged conspiracies, bribery conspiracies within this. There was one related to TNG Lee, which he had some sort of stake in 10% stake in pushing forward certain property owners getting migrant contracts, asylum shelter seeking contracts. So he would kind of get a cut if his property owners were to get these contracts through health and hospitals and other city agencies that were doling out a lot of contracts, obviously, to make sure that migrants were getting shelter. And then he did some sort of kickback when his preferred property owners were getting these deals. He would do a kickback to the son of Ingrid Lewis-Martin, $50,000 that was deposited into the account that I believe that Ingrid Lewis-Martin shares with her son. Yeah. Ingrid Lewis-Martin also received a bunch, according to a different indictment, a bunch of free catering because of, is this also related to, pushing forward different renovations.
Other Department of Buildings approvals.
For a property owner, pushing forward renovations, then she gets free catering in exchange. And then the final one is kind of the most interesting because people might
McInness Boulevard
know about this, right? So McInness Boulevard
neighborhood.
Former Brooklynite. So McInness Boulevard was very dangerous, probably is still really dangerous. The Adams administration said they were going to redesign it, put in bike lanes, protected intersections, you know, obviously make the place a lot safer. Highly controversial and really opposed by a major employer in the area, and that is, of course, Broadway Stages, which is owned by Gina Argento and Tony Argento, who, you know, they've been donating to city officials for years.
I mean, their names have popped up in previous investigations, back during the de Blasio years, because they've been prominent donors to people running for city office, and they're, you know, and they're one of the most prominent business owners in that part of Brooklyn.
So it's a sound stage, you know, big shows like Blue Blood, stuff like that, they film in their property. And they basically put forward this publicity campaign to block the redesign. And, you know, the indictment has all of these text messages where Ingrid is talking to Gina Argento, making sure that, you know, they kill this redesign because apparently Broadway Stages and Gina and the Argentos didn't want to reduce traffic because that would probably hurt their industry and hurt their business.
Yeah, they have a lot of trucks. They store a lot of
sets, right? So lots of stuff. We all see it on the street.
Right. A huge site like on the waterfront where they keep their trucks. Yeah. Like basically their argument was this is going to slow down our ability to do our jobs. But at the end of the day, there were all these pedestrian fatalities and massive traffic problems on McInness and the redesign. But Ingrid inserted herself in that.
But what's interesting about that is that
according to the indictment, she got $2,500. And maybe the best part about all of these indictments,
Screen Actors Guild, baby.
Not a starring role.
A minor
role in some show. What is it called? Godfather of Harlem.
I'm Bumpy.
How's it going, Ingrid?
It's going good.
Yeah.
Trying to get her SAG card, which.
But can I say the McInness Boulevard controversy that happened in this happened in plain view, right? I mean, this was a huge controversy. There was rallies, there were protests, and the Argentos were leading the charge in pushing back against. So this is not like some sort of secret campaign that they were waging, you know, behind the scenes at City Hall. They were pushing for this very publicly. And Ingrid Lewis-Martin, like everybody knew that she was involved in this. Like she's gotten a lot of flack over the years for quashing some of these street safety projects and the open streets. Like she's always been kind of, I don't want to say that she's anti-street safety improvements, but a lot of these projects that have
of bike lanes and those.
She's more on the pro car side.
She lives in a part of Brooklyn. I've stood outside of her house when it was getting raided. Like she lives in a part of Brooklyn. I've been there.
Where outside a lot of houses that have been raided.
Friendly.
Right. So she was kind of thought to be the force in City Hall who was pushing back on the same side as the Argentos, pushing back against the street safety improvements, and then not to get too bogged down in the timeline, but then the street safety changes were reversed.
Yeah.
And of course, now we're looking at the timeline and the indictment, it lines up. But then they were reversed. The reversal was reversed later, which also happened to be, like a couple of days after she was approached by the feds.
Right.
So
convenient.
The timing, once you look at the whole timeline, you can certainly draw some conclusions from it. But now, I'm not even sure. Are the improvements, have they all been implemented? Some of them have, I think.
Well, people aren't happy with the way that it was done still.
So, but I mean, this is like still an ongoing controversy.
An ongoing fight, yeah.
So that's basically the gist of what the allegations are. Obviously, Ayanna Harry was in court today. They all pleaded not guilty. We'll see where this ends up going in a couple months from now. I reached out to City Hall about whether Jesse Hamilton, who is the only current city employee wrapped up in all of this, whether or not he's going to be keeping his job. It's 2:30 on Thursday. I have nothing on my phone from them.
Can I just say though, I mean, not that bribery is acceptable in any form, but the amounts of money that we're talking about here are not a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
$50K is a lot,
but that's
deposited into the son's bank account. And similar, this is the fifth
But is it
allegation.
In the grand scheme of, facing 4 indictments?
No, of course not. But I mean, the previous indictment that was from December was but more than 100K, or about 100K, related to 2 other businesses that were trying to get their stuff pushed forward, and Ingrid pushed them forward, and then they ended up depositing 100K in the son and the mother's bank account, or Ingrid's bank account, and he bought a Porsche with it.
Yeah.
So,
but to your point, Courtney, like even with their house renovations, like
it's painting.
It's painting, and it's like the developer cuts a check for $2,000.
Yeah.
Was she that hard up on cash with the city salary? I mean, again, but why would you risk? And also, again, it seems like a lot of work to have to keep going back and forth with someone who's like, hello, has the city answered yet? Hey, they're being slow. They're being slow. Like, if that were me, I'd be like, you know what? It's not worth it. No amount of money's worth it. Like, it just seems like.
And well, hopefully you wouldn't be like, let's take some bribes.
But I guess, but my point is, like, she's a city official. She knows this isn't allowed.
No, but not only that, but it's not just that. It's that she's also already under scrutiny, right? I mean, we know going back to late November 2023 was when the mayor was approached by federal agents.
Right? Wouldn't you say, hey, I gotta get the heat off my back. I'm not doing any of this other stuff.
You should do nothing that would attract any kind of scrutiny.
Also, we don't know that she doesn't know this guy.
So just for our purposes, outside of what's going to happen to Ingrid, well, I mean, what does this mean for the mayor? I mean, I think that's probably what our listeners want to know, and our viewers want to know is does this even matter?
Yeah, I mean, it kicks up the dust of his own federal indictment that was dismissed, and the association between him and President Trump, possible coordination, is a massive no-no for Democrats in New York City, especially those that Adams wants to cater to reelect him. I mean, look at Cuomo right now, right? Allegedly coordinating with Trump and admitting it this past weekend in the Hamptons, or last weekend.
Hold your thought on that. We're going to talk about that later.
But my point is with Adams, it's like, he finally is trying to rehab this run. He opens up a new office in Harlem this week, and then this indictment drops of the person who literally was seen to speak with his voice.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, these people, including Ingrid Lewis-Martin, have sort of reared their heads again because, like I said earlier,
she was working on the campaign.
Right. I mean, Adams had kind of, like I said, just kind of cleaned house, and we had all these new faces at City Hall, and we hadn't heard much from people like Ingrid Lewis-Martin who had left City Hall. Then all of a sudden, the mayor's reelection campaign has many of these same people not working on it as paid staffers, but Ingrid Lewis-Martin had reportedly been on a phone call, organizing volunteers, telling them how to canvass and phone bank. So people like her and Winnie Greco are now back in the picture. Yeah, and that's not what the mayor needs for people to be reminded of.
And it shows he can't get away from his past.
Right.
Speaking of Winnie Greco, we had to just briefly go over Chipgate. So, Bobby, you're covering this today.
Yeah.
It's Chipgate.
I don't know if we can call it Chipgate.
Oh, we're definitely going to call it Chipgate.
I feel like we overgate controversies.
Well, okay. You come up with a new name.
And let us know after the podcast.
No, you need to come up with it right now. Anyway.
So the potato chip controversy, we're going to call it.
It's not as good as Chipgate, but whatever.
So basically a reporter who we all know, Katie Honan from The City, the news outlet The City.
A Rockaway native.
And The City has done a lot of really tough reporting on Winnie Greco. I mean, they broke all these stories about
they broke those stories
about the alleged corruption and some of these quid pro quos, and the fact that she organized fundraisers where there were straw donors and all this stuff.
Her home has been searched 2 years ago.
So she approaches Katie Honan, this reporter, on Wednesday outside of the mayor's new campaign office in Harlem. And then they walk into Whole Foods, and then Winnie Greco gives Katie a bag of chips.
And Katie tries to say, no, I don't want it.
She's like, I can't take this from you. But then Winnie leaves and she's left with the bag of chips. And then she walks to the subway and looks in the bag of chips, and there's money inside of it, at least $100. And so she calls Winnie and tells her she can't take this. He has to take it back. And Winnie doesn't call her back. And then, basically, long story short, it looks very much like she's trying to bribe a reporter, which is the worst idea.
And of all people.
Yeah, right. Bobby might have been able to
Bobby might have wanted to
hey, I'll give you some favorable coverage.
I don't even know if there's any chips in the bag. I think it was just the cash. And then her defense was that this was a misunderstanding, and it's a cultural misunderstanding, and this was just a token of friendship.
To give money out.
So they do it on Lunar New Year,
right? Which we're nowhere near.
So it seems a little bit weird.
Again, Winnie Greco is all right. We know she's under investigation by the U.S. Attorney in Brooklyn, and so to be bribing someone at this point, it just doesn't make any sense. I
wonder if it really was a I don't know.
No.
I was listening to Katie Honan on the Brian Lear show this morning, and it just felt, Katie herself was like, I wonder if it really was a misunderstanding.
It would be so stupid to try to bribe a reporter when you're
crazy.
Already under investigation.
Yeah. Also, this woman has been involved in politics for as long as the mayor has been in elected office.
Right.
She has been.
She was what was her title at City Hall? She worked at City Hall.
She was the head liaison of Asian American Affairs.
Right?
She was part of the cleaning house after her home was raided.
Right, but
she
even
should know what she's
that,
doing.
This is going back to One Brooklyn, right?
Right, when he was Brooklyn Borough President.
When he was Brooklyn Borough President, and she was raising this money to build a friendship arch between Brooklyn and Beijing, I believe. Mm-hmm. Got all this money. No arch. Don't know what happened with that. And it's this woman has been in the U.S. for several, decades, and she's trying to say this is a cultural misunderstanding. You know how to deal with a reporter. You're an ex-city employee. You've worked in city government.
Yeah, you don't give them money.
No. I'm not buying it.
All right. Well, none of us are up for sale.
Re-election?
For sale.
We're not up for sale.
We are not for sale.
Ethical. No one give us money. But you know what? People should contribute to the city because they're a nonprofit newsroom. So if you do want to help out the city, you can read them and donate to them. Okay, let's leave it there for a second. And our YouTube listeners, you can continue watching us. Our podcast listeners, we'll be right back, and we're going to talk about the rest of the mayor's race.
Was a fundraiser that was at the home of Jimmy Finkelstein and Pamela Finkelstein. Jimmy Finkelstein is the brother of Andy Stein.
Did you see Andy Stein this weekend?
Yes, he was at the fundraiser.
Okay, you didn't talk about the president?
No.
I don't think there's much of a difference between me standing up against Donald Trump and me standing up against Andrew Cuomo. These are two people who are in coordination, two people who are more comfortable with Republicans than Democrats, and two people who are willing to put the people of New York City last as they pursue their own ambitions.
So I believe it was Friday when I got an email in my inbox from Andrew Cuomo's campaign talking about prostitution. And I was like, what? Where did this even come from? This isn't Elliot Spitzer, right? Sorry, that was a bad joke. But
no, but legitimately, though, it's not an issue right now. The mayor's race or any conversation to do with politics in the city.
They found some old Zohran Mamdani statements supporting the legalization of sex work, and he is a co-sponsor of legislation in Albany put forward. I think the primary sponsor is Julia Salazar,
state senator,
that would decriminalize sex work. It would make it decriminal. It would make it
decriminalize certain offenses. It would the bill
for both Johns and for the sex worker. So it's a pretty broad piece of legislation.
Yeah, it's super. If you try to read it, I have to read it several times. But this is something that a couple years ago I was covering.
Yeah,
it was a big deal because actually Andrew Cuomo signed a bill that decriminalized the bill was called Walking While Trans, and it was loitering was illegal. Wasn't
Loitering for the
enforced.
purpose of sex work was illegal. So they used the argument by sex worker advocates was that they used it to target people who were trans.
And basically, and I believe it was a State Senator Brad Hoylman bill, Andrew Cuomo signed it. And it then jump-started the conversation about decriminalizing prostitution.
Which is not a crazy thing. Like, this isn't...
Well, but it also started the confusion between, are they legalizing it? Or how are you decriminalizing it also? Because there's stiff penalties for the men, the pimps, and then the women. Yeah. And there's an argument between, well, if these women are like, they're minorities, they're hard up on cash, they don't have any economic opportunity, and they're consenting adults, shouldn't they be allowed to engage in this kind of work? But if they're being trafficked, if they're a minor, that's still messed up, and those people should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But it was a whole debate a couple of years ago, but it really has died down. And Mamdani does support this one bill because he's a co-sponsor of it, but it hasn't gone anywhere in several years.
And I was going to say,
it's stuck. It's
the reason
stagnant.
we
It's
were
not
all
an issue is the point.
Right. The reason we were all surprised by, and he had a tweet about an ex post about it on Friday, I think. And I remember when I saw it, I was like, where did this come from?
I called the Mamdani campaign and I was like, what?
Because
I called
Mamdani
the
hasn't
Cuomo
been
people,
talking about it.
and they said, well, we're anticipating an article coming out. And I go,
they fed it to the Post.
well, no, or it's just they wanted to make this an issue because it's a talker, number one. Oh my God, he wants to possibly legalize, you know what I mean? Because those were some of the questions. And I asked him the other day, I was like, can you just explain
And
your
they didn't really
position?
want to talk about it initially. Like when I was on the phone with them, they were and I wasn't on the phone with the candidate himself, but I was on the phone with his spokesperson.
No, but he hasn't really wanted to talk about it.
No, he doesn't want to talk about it. Yeah.
Well, of course he doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, he hasn't brought it up at all on the campaign trail. And that's the thing about Mamdani that he's been so effective at this whole campaign is not talking about this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't talk about defunding the police, all the stuff that people might think is like too extremist and That,
I'm just naming all the potentially like pitfalls that he doesn't want to talk about.
And he doesn't.
This is one of them.
That's not what his campaign. He campaigns on affordability, and I mean, even when he's been asked, like, what about all this stuff that's in the DSA platform? He says that's not my. That's the DSA platform. It's not my platform. And so what Cuomo is doing is dredging this stuff up.
He's making
and trying to make an issue of it,
and trying to make him look more extreme. Right.
And it was the same thing with the rent stabilized apartment. That was the topic we talked about all week. Last week was Mamdani living in a rent stabilized apartment. Should he like get out of it? Does he make too much money? And then this week it was prostitution. And for Cuomo, I mean, it's the same thing we talked about last week. He's on the one hand, it's smart to raise issues that might embarrass Mamdani or kind of put him on the defensive to talk about.
Force him to talk about something that he doesn't want to talk about.
But on the other hand, it almost seems like he's grasping a little bit, trying to come up with something that would damage Mamdani. And I don't know if it is damaging him, but it at least got all of us talking about it this weekend, asking Mamdani questions about it.
Yeah, like I had to dust off these bills that I haven't looked at since 2022.
And Mamdani kind of like skirted around it a little bit when he's been asked.
When I asked him, I got him earlier this week and I was like, what is your position on this bill? And he turned it into, well, it's a public safety issue. Did not say anything about the contents of the bill. It's a public safety issue and I'm campaigning on a message of affordability, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, but do you support decriminalizing prostitution or legalizing it? You know, just to be like, maybe talk about the distinction. He was like, well, they're two very different things, but again, I'm blah, 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 blah. And he still has yet to lay out the nitty gritty complicated aspects of this bill, which there's multiple bills, by the way, in Albany.
There's different approaches. Like you can decriminalize it for the sex worker, but not the John. And then it's called the Nordic model. And like there's different approaches to it.
Right.
And when I say, I just want to rewind, when I say that it's not a crazy idea, it's just a national campaign that's out there. There's organizations that are fighting to do this really all across the country. I mean, brothels are legal in the state of Nevada, and I believe that there are other states that are considering, decriminalizing it for the sex worker.
And there's other, like you said, like the Nordic model. There's other Scandinavian countries that it is legal, but or it's decriminalized. I'm sorry, but this specific bill, again, there's several bills that would either strip penalties just for the women and not for the men, not for the pimps, right? The Johns, But we don't know right now what Mamdani's updated position is on this, even if he is a co-sponsor of current legislation. I mean, the current legislation, again, it's like you try to read it and it's very complicated.
It's also very different being a co-sponsor as a no-name assemblyman that nobody cares about, and
he didn't
as
write
the
it.
Democratic nominee for mayor. Like, do you still actually, if you're going to lead this city, do you really still want this?
Right.
But also there's the question
But still,
of
I mean, if you put your name on something, like you should be able to
obviously
defend
in
it.
principle probably support it.
Yeah.
the other question is
not
like
probably,
how much
You do.
how much is this being
absolutely do.
enforced? How much is this being enforced
Courtney
in the
can
first
answer this one.
place? And
It's not.
right. So like what are we
It's
even talking
not,
about? This isn't
but-
this
I mean,
isn't like some
Bragg
huge
and
change in policy.
Eric Gonzalez don't even prosecute,
prosecute, right.
prostitution. I'm waiting to hear back from the
For
other
just the
DAs.
women or for the Johns too, though?
I believe just for the women. I'm trying to get clarification from all of them. I'm in the process of surveying all the DAs for a story next week that we're going to, talk to sex workers.
And quickly, like I will say, when State Senator Jessica Ramos was running for mayor, one of the things, and she also actually is a co-sponsor of the decriminalization bill, but she would constantly talk about what's happening in Queens on Roosevelt Avenue and prostitutes walking up and down and how it's a quality of life issue. And I believe she got the mayor involved, and the mayor
he's gone out there.
and he's done at least 2 walks with the NYPD.
Yep. So just sticking or going back to Cuomo, I mean, he brought this up on Friday, then over the weekend or just a few days ago, it broke by Jeff Colton in Politico. He has this audio of a Hamptons fundraiser over the weekend where Cuomo is basically saying that he's depending on or relying upon Donald Trump, supporting him as a candidate, not Curtis Lewa, disparaging Curtis Lewa as not a very serious candidate, but telling this room full of kind of Trump-friendly Democrats
or Republican donor like Jimmy
in the
Finkelstein.
Hamptons, that he's probably going to get help from Donald Trump, and that's like his path to victory. And obviously, in a Democratic primary or for a Democratic politician to be saying that behind the scenes and then coming out into public and not saying it in public, but finding out about it in public, that's going to be a tough position for him.
Well, and the backstory too is that there was this article in the New York Times previously, I guess last week or 2 weeks ago, that he had been on the phone with Donald Trump talking about the race. So Cuomo denied that phone call ever took place. And then this audio, I mean, we didn't listen to the audio, but the transcript of it, which Jeff Colton from Politico put out, it's hard to draw the conclusion that he actually has spoken with Trump, but apparently somebody in the audience at the fundraiser asked this, right? Like asked him directly, have you or anyone on your team been talking to Trump or coordinating with Trump? And then he doesn't really give a direct answer.
Say this.
Yeah, let me say this.
I know the president very well.
Right. So, but I mean, clearly Cuomo is sending the message to these people at this fundraiser that Trump could be helpful in the general election by telling people not to vote for Curtis Lewa, and presumably then he's getting Republican votes.
I guess my question is, can he be helpful? I mean, how damaging is this to Cuomo?
If it looks like Trump is helping him, right? I mean,
how damaging is the story to Cuomo? How damaging
I think it's I think it's a campaign defining story because it exposes Cuomo for possibly lying for the last 2 weeks about any coordination. When he's selling one thing to the press and in public, nope, I have not coordinated. But then he's chummy with donors, potential donors, saying, listen, I know him very well, and I gotta tell you. You know what I mean? So it's Cuomo trying to have it both ways is the problem here. And it also gives Mamdani a really good opening to just say,
Mamdani has pounced on this.
He goes, listen, I put Cuomo and Trump in the same basket, and so should you.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. You can always watch us on weeknights on Inside City Hall at 7 o'clock. And we love your feedback. Send us an email at yourstory.newyork1@charter.com. You can subscribe to Off Topic wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, which I feel like I'm the only one that uses.
Who tells your story?
YouTube. You can listen to Burn Sing. If you like what you're hearing, you can send us an audio message of singing if you want, or just leave us a review. Thanks to our producer, Anthony Roman. We'll see you next week.